Welcome to the Cello Buying Guide. The first thing I'd like to do is give you a blind taste test, or in our case, a blind listening test. And this is going to do a couple of things. First, it's going to help you get more out of the rest of the video, out of the buying guide. And also, doing it here at the beginning, we're going to get your gut reaction to what you're hearing before I give you lots and lots of information and potentially cause you to overthink what you're hearing. This will get your honest gut reaction. And I want you to write down 3 things. They're very simple, just 3 things while you're listening. And I'll give you time to listen and write these down. The first thing is, of course, rank them in order of most favorite sounding to least favorite sounding. The second thing I want you to write down is what you think each one of them cost. Okay, what you think the range of cost is. And the third thing, just literally a few words, a few descriptive words. Doesn't even have to be complete sentences. Just write down a couple of words about why you think your favorite is your favorite, and then also write down a couple of descriptive words about your least favorite. Why does it sound like your least favorite? Or what is it you don't like about it? Nothing major. Okay, got it all written down? Remember, this is video and you can pause it before you go on to the next section. I would definitely be a person who would pause it. I take a long time to think about things like this, which is why I'm doing it at the beginning for you, so no shame in pausing it before you go on to the rest of the video. Okay? Now, if you're coming over from the Can You Hear the Difference video, I did switch up the order for you, so listen carefully. So what are the top things to consider when you're buying a new instrument? Whether you're buying an instrument for the first time or whether you're upgrading, there's a few considerations to keep in mind. The first is make sure you go to a reputable dealer, whether it's online or local. Make sure you get a recommendation. It is possible to purchase online or through the mail. In fact, the very second cello that I ever owned in my cello playing life was through the mail, sight unseen. The difference is that I bought that cello from a person that came highly recommended. The cello and the maker came highly recommended from a teacher that I was working with at the time who I trusted greatly. He was a wonderful teacher. And he recommended this cello to me, and I ordered it. It came in the mail. I didn't even try out a bunch of different cellos because it was what I could afford at the time. And it worked for me, and it was a great cello. I ended up selling that cello, actually, to a fellow student in college when I upgraded to my current cello because he liked it so much. So it is possible, but that recommendation piece from somebody you know and trust, from somebody who has actually purchased the instrument before, you know it's good quality, that's what you need to make sure of before you purchase online or through the mail. Over 90% of cases, it's better to go to your local shop. The prices online seem amazing and wonderful, but remember, there's a reason for those low prices. The instruments just don't hold up. They don't play well. In many cases, you end up spending more on those instruments than you would if you just went and spent a little bit more in the very beginning buying a good quality instrument. The ones that you find online that are probably worth buying are going to be about the same price that you would pay locally, but because, things happen to an instrument, they settle, they move, better to just go local. The last and probably the most important reason to go local is that you probably already own an instrument, or you have an instrument that you're renting or been paying rental on, go to your local shop, find out if you have a credit. You may have a credit and don't know it, or you may have already bought the instrument. I have this happen to students all the time. They're renting, and then they go to the shop and they find out that they actually own it, as of their last payment or their next payment. They're very close to owning it. So you may be very close to owning yours if you're renting it, or maybe you already bought it. Find out what the trade-in value would be on that instrument. That helps greatly, toward the purchase of the new one. And this leads us to budget. Decide how much you're going to spend. And there's another important consideration that would be with budget or right next to budget, which is really, really important. They really have to go hand in hand, and that is, how long do you want this cello to be good for you? If you're upgrading, if you're buying a new one, it's because, you've outgrown the other one, either literally outgrown it, it's too small, or you need a better sounding instrument. You've grown as a musician, okay? You've outgrown the sound of the other one. Well, when do you think you're going to outgrow the next one? Like, do you need this cello to make it through high school, through middle school? Do you know that you're just going to be an amateur player, but you want to play in college? You want this thing to last through college and into your young adult years? Or maybe you're already an adult and you're not sure, but you are planning to play in some community ensembles. Like, what exactly are you going to be doing with this cello? You're just going to be playing it at home for fun, but maybe you still want a great sound from it. There's lots of considerations about the sound and how good you want the sound and for how long you want this cello to be a good cello for you. So here where I am in the St. Louis region, the scenario I've gone through the most times is someone's in high school, maybe they're a freshman or sophomore, and they're upgrading their instrument. They want this to be a good cello for them for the rest of high school and probably into college. They're probably going to play, in one of the orchestras when they go off to school, even if they're not going to be a major. There's a lot of colleges that have orchestras, and there's even some incentives to play in orchestras. I had a student who played in college, and she didn't have a scholarship because she wasn't a major, but she got priority for signing up for classes for playing in the orchestra, so I thought that was a great deal. But anyways, there's a lot of reasons to play in college, monetary and non-monetary. And so maybe you want this instrument to last through college. Maybe you know that you're going to be done with it at the end of high school, and then you're going to upgrade again. Here, again, where I am, you could expect to spend between $3,000 and $6,000 for a new cello outfit, okay? Cello, bow, and case. That price range generally would definitely get a good player, a student who's kind of serious, to the end of high school, and then maybe into college and beyond. Now, that's definitely not enough if you are pre-professional. Like, you're going to major in music in college and beyond. Probably you're going to need to spend a little bit more on a little bit nicer instrument. But, all of this is in the context of talk to your private teacher. Talk to your private teacher. You can use your orchestra teacher as a reference. But have somebody that you see in person that is going to be able to help you determine what the course of action is, what you need to spend, all the rest of the considerations. I'm going to give you lots of them here, but make sure you're talking to your teacher about this. Now, the next thing, I kind of mentioned a little bit of it before, is what are all of the things that you're going to be purchasing? Or is it going to be just an instrument, like you like your case and you like your bow, and maybe you're just getting a new cello? Or are you also getting a new bow and a new case because you don't have either? Or you have a case, but you're going to be getting a nicer instrument, and so you want to get a nicer case to protect the nicer instrument because you feel like this case is inadequate for a nicer cello. So there's, of course, lots of different combinations there. I know that when I upgraded my cello in 2003, I kept the same bow because I had a really, really nice bow with the cello that I had gotten through the mail. And so it was a great bow, so I kept it. Same with the case. The case was really, really nice, so I didn't upgrade the case. So you never know. But make sure you have that budget and make sure you know exactly what you're dividing that budget on. And so there's kind of a sliding scale. If you're going to spend a little bit more on the cello, you might want to spend a little bit more on the bow so that it matches the sound of the cello. You don't want to get a super cheap bow to go with a really, really nice cello, and vice versa, kind of, is that you can't buy a really inexpensive cello and then get a really expensive bow as far as bows go and expect it to make that instrument just sound so much better. It's not going to work that way. Work the numbers around, decide what all that you need to upgrade, and then go from there. All right, so we have our budget. We know exactly what we are buying, all the different things that we're going to buy with the instrument here, and we're headed to the shops to take a look. Question you want to ask is, I said one of them earlier, what's the trade-up value of my instrument. If you are going to take an instrument into a shop, call ahead, tell them, that you're going to be coming, or ask them if you can come. Ask them if there's going to be somebody on hand that could look at your old instrument to give you a trade-in value if it's not somebody you're already renting from or have purchased from. But you might want to schedule an appointment depending on the shop, depending on how many cellos you're going to try out while you're there. It's a good idea to call ahead. Another question to ask is about the strings. So maybe you get a cello and you like the way it sounds, but it has some strings on it already that, maybe okay, or, kind of lower end. Find out if they can put some new strings on it before you try it out, or certainly ask about upgrading the strings that are currently on there and how that's going to affect the price. And really have fun going around trying different cellos. You're going to have to set aside some time to do this. And, the closer you can put them together, so that you're hearing them while they're all fresh on your mind, is a big help. Sometimes it's not always practical depending on where you live. Like I said, here in St. Louis, I did do it in one day with a student. It was a very long day to travel around to all the string shops in town and try out a bunch of different cellos, but it is possible if you can set aside a whole day like that to go around and try them out. I would narrow it down to about 3, all right? At least 2, of course. 3. More than 3, I think you're kind of pushing it and it's just too many to choose from, but 3 seems to be a nice magical number. So after you get it narrowed down to the 3, you're gonna wanna bring them all back to home so that you can hear them in the same space. Every shop is a little bit different, and so each instrument is going to sound, of course, different in each shop. So that you can cut out that variable, it is very, very important that you take all of the choices and play them in the same space. Play them for your teacher in that same space. Have your teacher play them for you. This is really, really important, okay? Now, you can't have your teacher there, obviously, a lot to play all these instruments. So one thing you can do to make yourself the third-party observer is record yourself. Record yourself on all these instruments and listen back to it so that you can listen with a more objective ear. All instruments, especially cello, sound different when you're standing in front of them than when they're sitting right here under your ear. Some can sound really, really loud, kind of boxy, like when you're playing them, like, oh, this has such a big sound. And then you go stand in front of it and you realize it doesn't have a very big sound at all. So really, really important that you hear it from the outside as others are going to hear it. Very, very important. And make sure you play all of them a little bit every day, all right? You're only gonna get to keep them for a few days anyway. So you wanna make sure you try them all out as much as possible. Now, since we're talking about sound, that of course brings us to the most important thing, which is the sound of the instrument. What are you looking for? Well, that's the essential question, isn't it? And it's probably the most difficult, especially if you're a student, especially if you're a novice and you haven't purchased a lot of instruments. This is why it's so important to have your in-person teacher there helping you with this on this purchasing journey. But a couple of things I can tell you. One, I just mentioned, some instruments can sound really loud under your ear, like they have this just big, wonderful sound, but it's the wrong kind of big sound, meaning it's kind of boxy. It's sort of the sound might be manufactured because they just made the plates, the tops and the backs kind of thinned out, all right, so that they would sound loud under your ear. But then sit in front of it or stand in front of it and it's not very loud at all. Projection is a factor, okay? The warmth of the sound. This is why I wanted you to use your own words at the very beginning of the video. Just what is the quality of the instrument and do you like it? You're the ultimate judge. You're the one that has to play it every day, and so maybe you're not playing for a lot of people. Maybe you're just playing in your community orchestra and you want something that sounds good under your ear while you're playing it for yourself. If that's the case, then buy the best one that fits that criteria, okay? If you are wanting to project, which usually we are, you'll get more out of your cello journey if you are playing in ensembles, community orchestras, playing at church, whatever. Usually it's important what others are hearing. How does my cello sound out there in the audience, out there in the hall, okay? And all of those factors come into play. How warm does it sound? Does it sound kind of bright? Does it sound kind of dull? Maybe I could get some strings to match it to kind of balance it if it's one way or the other. Does it sound harsh? I want it to project and go out, but does it sound, like it's gonna start squeaking or cracking at any moment? Is it hard to get? Is it so soft? Is it so warm? Okay. Is it so gentle that I'm having just a hard time getting any sound out of it at all? All right, and getting it to project out there in the audience. What is the color of the sound? Do I like it? Again, coming back to this question of taste, okay? And it all is a matter of taste, which is one important reason that we're about to do this this test here. I'm going to let you see them this time. I'm going to play the same instruments as we did with the blind test. I'm not going to tell you how much they are yet, but I'm going to let you see them and play them for you. Same recording, and see what you think. How do you describe these different instruments? You know, in making this video and in making the video, the Can You Hear the Difference video, I wanted to just confirm what I was feeling and thinking and hearing about these different instruments compared together. And so I played them in person live for different professionals, some of my colleagues, to get their opinion on these different instruments. Some of the words that are used to describe them, for example, cello number 1 sounds a little warmer. It doesn't sound as bright, but then some people would describe it as bright when hearing it next to cello number 3. One listener described cello number 1 as maybe projecting a little bit more, or projecting a little bit better, or that the sound out farther away was better than cello number 3. But then some people, listening up close, chose cello number 3 as the best cello that they liked, that it has that quintessential cello sound. It's like it's very dark and rich and wonderful, and cello number 1 just doesn't have that robust sound. Cello number 2 was pretty much hands down everybody's least favorite. Okay. So what's wrong with it? Well, doesn't project, and we don't describe that tone as warm. We just describe it as dull. I mean, it's a cello that just doesn't resonate. It doesn't even really resonate under your ear. It doesn't resonate out there in the audience. It just doesn't make much of a sound. It's an inexpensive cello, as you're about to see. So no surprises there on cello number 2. Yeah. Least expensive, worst sounding. Okay. A decent entry level for, a student cello, but not the kind of sound we ultimately want to be making on the cello or getting from the cello. Now the shocker has been the price difference between cello number 1 and cello number 3. Okay. Very, very shocking that one instrument could sound so well, or at least be close, and have such a dramatic price difference. So, with instruments, like other fine things, we, tend to say you get what you pay for. But in this case, I would say you could probably find a deal out there somewhere. So this is why it's so important to, really look around. Even if you're trading in, to try lots of different cellos in that shop that they have. This is really, really important. And actually, in the making of this video, something similar happened with a student who bought a cello, which was, we're comparing cellos, and we were playing all 3 of them. The one she's trading in, her original, and the 2 she's thinking about choosing between to upgrade to. Right, so 2 nice cellos and the one entry-level cello. And we're playing them all different ways and having a hard time deciding and doing all this. And I decided, there was one that was kind of sounding like the entry-level cello. And the price difference between these cellos was, her entry-level, sort of beginner cello was around $1,200. And we're looking at 2 cellos that are, I believe they were $4,200 and $4,800. And there was a little bit of difference between them. They're both very nice. But I decided to play them in a different order. I played the $4,800 one, okay? Then I played her original cello, her entry-level cello. Then I played the $4,200 one, I think it was. Did I say that? And then I played the entry-level cello. And that kind of sealed the deal for everybody, because when you heard it's called the beginner cello, next to the $4,200 cello, there was not a $3,000 difference, okay? When you heard the $4,200 one next to, back with the $4,800 cello, they were pretty close. And it was like, is it worth the extra $600, blah, blah, blah. But when you heard this $1,200 cello sound almost as good as this $4,200 cello, it was like, that is definitely not worth $3,000. And for just a little bit more, okay, $600, and we're talking about all of these things costing so much, and you're going to play this thing for years and years and years, this is not much of a price difference, okay? This is worth spending the money. When you heard the $1,200 cello next to the $4,800 cello, it was like, whoa, night and day difference, okay? And so this is really important, hear them in different ways, play them a lot, take your time making this decision, okay? And what were the differences? What was the little bit of difference maybe in that $600 there on those cellos? Well, the one that was just a little bit more projected more. I made sure that when I was listening to it, I stood far away, not just right over it. And there was just a little bit more of that quintessential cello sound that was very organic and earthy and rich, but it sounded good in the high sections. It sounded not too bright, but it sounded bright if you needed it to. Like the cello responded, okay, to what you were asking it to do, okay? Which is the mark of a kind of an advanced cello. And a cello like that may be hard to play at first, and you have to get used to it, all right? And that's the nature of things. But it's worth spending that little bit of extra money. How else would I describe them? The others were kind of dull, didn't project, didn't have a rich, open, robust sound. I mentioned that I played it for colleagues, for other professional musicians live. One listener who heard all three of these cellos in a bigger space and was kind of far away was the only time that they clearly chose cello number 1 as their favorite. So what is the $10,000 difference, and why was that the only time that a listener liked that cello the best in person, hands down? Well, one thing that my video fails to do, all right, in this video and in the Can You Hear the Difference? I mean, they're very helpful. I mean, there's a reason we watch these. There's a reason you're watching still. There's a reason I made it. They're very informative. But most of these videos don't take these instruments into a concert hall. And this is where music is meant to be heard, in a space that is resonant, that is built to bring out all the nuance and all of these things of these instruments. And I hope one day we can do this experiment again. We can do this buying guide again in a real concert hall, in a real recital hall. And I think that would also be very revealing about what these instruments really sound like. Can you always do that? No. Is it always realistic to take 3 cellos and go try them out in a recital, book a recital hall and go try them? No, you can't do that. All right, that's logistically not possible for most people all the time. And that's okay. All right, that's okay. You still are getting a correct sense, I guess, of the instrument. But if we're talking about getting up into that $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 range, it might behoove you and all of us to go try those cellos out in a real space where we're going to be performing music. If you're the member of a church, maybe go, ask to borrow the sanctuary for an afternoon. That's a great space that has probably a big open sound where you could try some things out. Maybe your school has a recital hall and you could try these things out. If you're getting up there into that price range, go find a better space to try them out. Okay? Now, if you're in this buying decision, if you're doing research because you're thinking about upgrading a cello from a fractional size, maybe you're not sure if you should move up in size, or maybe you're going to be getting your cello very, very soon, and it is an upgrade, or maybe it's a little bit different shape, and you need some refresher, or you need to learn the first time about how to sit with the cello and how the cello should be, or whether or not we should even move up a size at all. I have a video all about cello sizing, posture, and position, and you can watch it right here.